Serious, Redditors who have been clinically dead, what did you experience in death if anything? Nothing. It was like when you go to sleep, you don't realize you fall asleep, then all of a sudden you're waking up. I quit breathing and then my heart stopped for 2.5 minutes. I woke up 21 hours later intubated with broken ribs from resuscitation. Literally had no idea what happened. I was in a room, then 21 hours later in the hospital. No flashbacks of my life, no white light, no feeling of peace, just nothingness. Yup, same thing. I was in a car accident and was legally dead for about 3 minutes before my heart started again, and that is the exact explanation of what I had. It was accident, nothing, and then you wake up somewhere else and have no idea what happened. I had a terrible reaction to anesthesia and my breathing and heart slowed and stopped. I was out at the time of course, but I remember them trying to wake me up after and just feeling like I had been very far away and it was such a slog to come back. For weeks everything seemed so muffled and wrong, like I was watching life from outside of myself. Complete nothingness. I overdosed as a teenager and was gone for a couple of minutes. I remember two things. I remember just complete darkness that felt like nothingness yet complete peace at the same time. The other thing I remember is the pain I felt when they brought me back. I can't even describe to you the pain I felt when I was brought back to life. It truly was the most painful experience I've ever had. I almost feel like it was my mind, body or something saying it didn't want to come back to life. Truly an odd situation that I sometimes can't comprehend when I think about it. I can't remember it because I was an infant. I've heard many stories of me getting super relaxed and just dying. The NICU nurses would just flick my foot and that would be enough to get my tiny, underdeveloped body going again. I was born 3 months early, so I was constantly either on death's door or would die briefly. I'm 22 now and doing well, despite a lot of health issues and underdeveloped body parts. I don't die when I get comfy anymore, which is nice. Oh, the first picture some took of me killed me. It had something to do with the Flash. As much as I would want to declare it as clarity or ascended reality, the most realistic and true answer would be simply nothing. Void, not even space. How I would describe it would be like this: not being able to feel anything at all, not being able to see, to hear, to move at all, but yet I was fully conscious that I was me, and I was there. This is freaking me out, man. I shortly died when I was 18. I remember talking to a friend, all of a sudden not feeling well off and telling him I was dizzy. Next thing, I woke up while being put into an ambulance. My heart had randomly stopped. I was lucky my friend knew CPR and my neighbor, who coincidentally drove by, was a nurse. The being dead part is a whole lot of nothing, but the coming back to life I do remember quite well. It felt like I had to use every ounce of energy left in my body to climb out of a deep pit of nothingness, back to life so to speak. I experienced it as it taking conscious effort to start breathing again. Obviously it was the CPR and other medical stuff that did the actual work, but anyway, this is how I personally experienced that. Alive and suffering. Alive and suffering. Big dark blank spot. Alive and sufferings and freaking confused and everything freaking hurts. 5/10. Would not recommend. I had some kind of a shock to the anesthesia as a kid during a surgery. I had an out-of-body experience seeing docs fumbling around my body, wondering how the heck am I there when clearly I'm flying around freely. I was very calm. It felt really peaceful. After that I went to a forest and flew in the sky, amongst other things, but eventually felt an urge to return. I didn't actually feel like returning and giving up my ethereal freedom to fly, shift etc. And TBH, I'm sorry I came back. I just wanted to tell my parents and friends of this awesome experience. The desire to share pushed me back in my broken, spastic shell suffering from cerebral palsy, and that's my worst decision ever. I went to space, I think. Somewhere in space. I definitely went somewhere that wasn't here. It was the most peaceful place. No troubles, no problems, no worries. I died after a car crash when I was 16. Whoa, hope recovery went good. I wanted to look After the blinding, knock you out if you move, pain and the feeling of burning from the inside out until you've sweated out all the water in your body, I reached a point of a really comfortable chilly temperature. After that it felt as though warm water that was made with exactly the temperature I needed slowly started rising. I was flat on my back on a concrete convention floor. Despite all that, I didn't feel wet or drippy, just absolutely perfect. A light wind started blowing and I could feel it all over my body as if I was wet on a windy day after getting out of a swimming pool, or like having someone's warm breath against the back of your neck or ear. It felt so good I couldn't help but keep my eyes closed. I was completely and utterly at peace and in total comfort until the pain came back and I knew I was home again. I wish I looked though, but at the same time I'm glad I didn't. When I died it was a lot of nothing. I would say it was calming, but that's not quite the right word for it. Just a lack of feeling, emotion and physical. Very surreal, but not in a good or bad way. Just kind of not. Sounds pretty okay. Clinically died from stopped heart after a severe anaphylactic reaction for a couple of minutes. I remember a feeling of horrible terror, like I was being sucked into a black hole. Like the terror that just freezes you up all inside. Then blackness. Then I remember just laying there exhausted. I had anaphylactic a few months ago, went to the hospital overnight. Still don't know what caused it. Scary stuff. My boyfriend has been clinically dead 3 times and his response to this was that there was nothing, and when he was brought back he felt hollow, like he left a piece of himself behind. I understand that feeling. Weirdly though, mine was from seizures. Maybe we're making Horcruxes. Don't tell. I died of alcohol poisoning and had to be revived in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Honestly, I don't remember anything. I remember one minute I was drinking a fifth of whiskey, and the next moment I was on a gurney in the hallway at the hospital. My experience with death was that it felt like I just went to sleep and woke up, but I don't want to discourage anyone who might believe or experience anything else. Again, I was extremely drunk and didn't remember a whole night's worth of events that were later pieced together for me by my friends who called the ambulance, the police, the EMS workers, and the hospital staff. If there was something after death, maybe I did experience it, but I certainly was too loaded to remember it. Overdosed from fentanyl. Clinically dead and brought back in hospital. 1 second there's blood in the syringe, then almost like time travel, coming to it on the beds. There was nothing in between. No time, no blackout, no thought, recollecting it. It's 2 separate moments conjoined with the knowledge that I wasn't around in between. I noticed people who overdose mostly describe it like you, but others describe nothing. Some describe peace or panic and some saw light. I had little to no brain activity after hitting my head really dang hard on a bike. No helmet of course. I was about 13. It felt like I was somewhere else, but I was only allowed a glimpse, I guess. It's hard to describe. I felt like I was in the presence of something else. I came to about 4 days after the accident. Really messed me up. I had to learn how to walk again. Talking was hard. After about 3 months I had most of my motor functions back, but my thinking process felt slower than before for years. I feel like a lot of my memories from childhood are kinda gone now. Immediately after the accident I had memory problems and a bit of a personality change. I became little more introverted. I suffered an amniotic fluid embolism and dick after my daughter was born. My heart and lungs stopped and for 10 minutes the medical team worked to save me. Many people have asked me if I saw anything or experienced anything. My eyes shut and all I remember is black. I think if I had experienced or seen anything I would not have come back. I died due to anesthesia complications but got brought back obviously. I remember it pretty well for some odd reason. I remember seeing a bright light, then it going really dark and I felt like I was floating. Moments before I woke up, all the memories I had throughout my life quickly rewinding and I woke up saying what just happened. You know what's funny? That most of these stories contradict themselves in small ways. The bright light probably was the light from the room shining in your now deceased eyes. Technically I've been dead 5 times. 4 times during open heart surgery, because they have to stop the heart, and once outside of open heart surgery. I remember wanting to stay awake but I couldn't, like everything slowed down. I lost sense of time. I didn't see a white light, no dead loved ones. It did feel almost calming in some ways. I wasn't scared. But something that does happen, especially when I was younger. I could feel spirits, ghosts, what have you. I'm not the ghost whisperer, but I could sense them. No talking to them. It was like a shadow figure. I could see and sense them. And I think this ties in with my deaths. It's a strange feeling. It felt like I fell asleep, but I woke up a week later in the ICU. I didn't talk to God. I didn't see a light. It was just black. There was no bright light. It was a motorcycle accident. I was pronounced dead on the scene. They took me to a hospital and did a lot of compression shocks and stuck in a breathing tube. It was like I woke up somewhere else. It was pretty and blue, and I saw angels. I didn't believe in angels at the time, or any god, so it was a bit of a head frick. I reached out and felt their wings and they were silky soft. It was a beautiful woman and she smiled at me and said, "Don't worry, it's not your time yet. You'll be back here soon enough. Go back to life." This whole time I could hear the conversations going on around me in my hospital bed, but I didn't see anyone. After I was brought back to life, I was talking about what I heard my family say, and they told me that that was clinically impossible for me to have heard that, because I was legally dead with no heartbeat at the time. My question was, but then how is it that I told you verbatim what you said? I was dead for 5 minutes, but, thank God, I had no lasting brain damage except for epilepsy. Died twice from H overdoses. Literally nothing happens. 1 second you're awake and the next you're basically asleep without realizing what happened until you're revived. Nothing. Not blackness. Not darkness. Not silence. I mean nothing, which the human mind simply cannot picture. It used to drive me half mad thinking about it. Worse, I suffered memory loss and the nothing was my first memory in this life. Everything before that, 7 years, I was a kid, was gone. Of course, since it's nothing, a complete void, there's nothing to remember. It's so hard to explain. Number. No tunnel of light. No relatives. No pearly gates. No winged beings. No Lord of the Universe giving me a pep talk. Just nothing. And I have spent every day since then trying not to go back. I had a heart seizure and died in the snow. I got a massive pain in my chest and everything went black. I saw a bright light, tiny at first. It got bigger and bigger. When it reached me I felt so at peace. I saw my grandmother past 20 years. She told me when I was young that she would see me in heaven. I was almost to her. When I heard he is not done, I came to with my face in 10 and almost a foot of snow. No one knows how long I was dead. I have brain damage from being dead too long. This thread, being clinically dead, heart death, is different from clinical brain death, which no one comes back from. Anyways, cool experience. I saw swimming, free diving, seen missing, woke up next day in hospital, don't remember a thing. Dying is fairly peaceful. It's the undying that's awful. Having said that, life is wonderful and I'm glad to be here experiencing it still. Absolutely nothing. It is a very difficult sensation to describe, but when I was out, I just nowhere. It wasn't until I was coming back in that I even realized I was gone. The feeling of coming back into the world is kind of like falling in reverse. Suddenly everything is too bright, too loud, too painful, too nauseating. You can feel their hands on you, in my case, hospital personnel, and you can hear the voices, but all you want is to go back out for people to remove their hands, to just stop talking and let you go. It's not until they bring you back that you realize how peaceful it is to not be here. Just a quiet, painless, deep, restful, and utterly blank nothingness. For the record, I am very thankful to have life and health. I'm just simply stating my own experience. I'm not glamorizing death in any way, shape or form. So please don't get the wrong impression. I would much rather be alive here on Earth. But I no longer fear death, and when my true time comes, I take solace in knowing I will rest easy. I haven't officially died, but my cardiologist told me that some of the weird dreams I was having was due to heart failure. I have had several dreams where I'm either being crushed, or suffocated, or trapped. One time, I was in a kind of crack, like a crevasse or something. I was being squeezed. It was so horrible and I woke, as I always have, absolutely gasping for breath. I find if I sleep sitting up, it doesn't happen, but if I slide down onto my back, it will happen. I live in fear that one day I won't wake up at all. TBH, dying in your sleep is probably the easiest way to go as opposed to witnessing your life fade away. A black void, like sleeping without dreaming. Came back feeling like I had not had water in years. Now I'm not as worried about death, but terrified that feeling of thirst will be eternal. I have ice water daily now because I don't know when it will be my last. I'm sure this is really a result of the blood loss, but it permanently freaked me out. Think of the brain as a chemical computer. Electrical activity helps direct the computer, but there's still chemical activity occurring in the brain after the heart and lungs have stopped. One source I read said there's been chemical activity recorded 24 hours after death. So, anyone who's claimed to experience stuff after they've technically died likely were experiencing this chemical activity in the brain. Boy, I was reading all these comments and I almost stopped being depressed. Then you said the feeling would end. Sorry, bad spelling, it's midnight. I've been tactically declared dead twice when I was young because I'm allergic to a type of medicine. I passed out so I didn't see anything, but I don't remember anything, like my memory just turned off. If you ask, I will go deeper, but sorry, it kind of fit. So I thought I'd add it. Oh, and my mom was the one who saved my life. I had a now deceased co-worker who recounted to me the time he died the first time. He was read his last rites and drifted off to sleep. He could hear his wife crying and says he thinks he saw a light, but it was really hard to tell for sure and felt very, very cold. Then he heard a loud bang and for sure now darkness. He woke up a few hours later. He speculates that the bang was him coming back, but he remained unconscious yet alive. My brother nearly died in 2014 due to a rare bacterial blood infection. He's a very serious guy, and it shook me to the core when he said he saw white, except he couldn't look up. There was talking, there was people, but he couldn't move his head to see who they were. I'm glad he didn't, because my dear big brother might not be here if he did. I see these all the time and never answer because I don't like taking away people's hope. In 2017 I overdosed on aspirated on my own vomit, stopped breathing, heart stopped, and I was clinically dead for an undetermined amount of time. I suffered no brain damage, so it must have been relatively short. I woke up 10 days later when I was able to breathe without help and had no idea where I was or how much time had passed. When I was out, it was just like sleep. I was unconscious. That's it. No dreams, no darkness, just nothing at all. I'd like to call it peaceful, but there wasn't any feeling at all. I was suddenly 10 days in the future with a lot of explaining to do and a lot of fluid in my lungs. I hope, and do believe, that that's what death is like, because it makes sense to me. So in my mind 20s I went out day drinking with a friend. We had a work meeting at 8 PM. I was told we finally left the bar around 8:30ish. I remember getting to the bar, drinking, talking crap, a lot more drinking. Then my memory cuts to her driving with the convertible top down, music blaring. Memory cuts to me sitting up on side passenger door dancing. Cuts to red lights. Cuts to me in the hospital 2 days later with tubes in my mouth and socks on hands. I noticed the socks when I went to touch the tubes, and then my family comes into view. My mom, 2 older brothers and my father. They allow me to gently touch the tub so that I knew what it was. I did one of these while my mom explained that I was in an accident. I was put in a induced coma. I had a fractured skull, hematoma, and had a craniotomy. For me it was only for about a second of my heart stopping. Very fortunate for me I was being treated in a hospital for something else when it happened, and a nurse and a doctor were right there. It felt like I was underwater and that I started vibrating through my whole body. It was an emergency situation related to a cardiac event. I went from overwhelming pain and terror to sudden jarring comfort. Nothing hurt. I felt weightless. The temperature was perfect. It was quiet. I felt very serene. Then almost as suddenly, the pain and light and noise and chaos came rushing back and hit me like a freight train. I had just been successfully defibrillated. Not my story, but my mother-in-law's. She had a massive brain hemorrhage about 7 years ago. After she got to the hospital she died in the ER for about 90 seconds. When she came back she was speaking French to the staff, and she hadn't spoken it since her high school French classes in the early 60s. After a few days she was able to communicate in English again. She recalled feeling incredibly high as she drifted off. She said it was the most peaceful and serene feeling she'd ever experienced. According to her, this feeling of contentment lasted for a few days past her being revived. It's crazy. Who has a massive stroke, dies, speaks French and laughs and giggles for a few days afterwards? She has some lasting effects from her brain injury. One eye is mostly blind, balance and cognition issues. But you'd never know from talking to her that a racquetball-sized region of her brain is completely missing now. The brain is amazing. It's crazy how little we know about death. Some people have described oblivion. Some have described just darkness, but you are still conscious, bright light, feeling another presence, etc. So many different experiences reminds me how little we know about anything that happens after we die. I have also seen people comment that the brain still survives afterwards for a short time, so all of this could just be what their brain thinks or wants to see. There is a variety in life. There may be a variety in death. Maybe it's a mistake to assume it will be the same for everyone. Collapsed both lungs. Respiratory arrest. Stopped breathing for quite some time, I'm told. Everything just slowed right down. I apologized to the paramedic in the back of the ambulance with me. Told her I can't do it any longer, and I was sorry. I felt at peace with what was happening and watched out of the little window of the back doors as everything around me slowed down. Then black. Nothing till I woke up in pain to them stabbing me in the chest with a large needle trying to remove the air from my chest cavity. That hurt, so I went back to sleep. Woke up again in pain to them shoving tubes in my armpits connected to machines. Apparently one lung detached from my rib cage about a week earlier, and then the other one went due to stress. I just thought I had bad asthma for a week. I saw myself above my body. I told my mother and father what they were doing when I was dead. I saw how many doctors there were in the room and how long I was gone for, and they said there was no way I could have known that. When I went back into my body, I came back to life. When I was 13, I attempted, I guess, committed, would be a more accurate term, suicide and died. My experience was not in death, because I didn't even know I died until days later when I was present and ready enough to be told what happened in the in-between. My experience comes in the fact that I remember a distinctive nurse with lilac-colored eyeshadow, clumpy mascara and lavender scrubs telling me it would be okay and to try and focus on her. She looked like she was in her 50s, had crow's feet wrinkles, and I could see her peach fuzz on her cheek in the bright butt light overhead. I remember her really clearly, but I have an understanding that when I was actually seeing her, I was fading in and out, so it was like a blurry edge view with her being a clear focal point. Similar to the movies, but not really as cinematic. After I had been told I had died, I was pretty adamant of trying to understand just exactly what had happened and piecing together the parts of I actually died and I actually died. How am I alive now, and all the other emotional crap committing suicide brings. I kept asking my parents a lot of questions, most of which they could answer. When I asked about her, they couldn't. They still say, to this day, that they never saw a nurse fitting that description there with me. Okay, fine. They weren't with me every step of the way, because they couldn't be. They had to drive an hour in from work, so there's a lapse in them being there, and seeing the team who was with me. And then when I was stable enough to be put into a room, I asked the nurse who was attending to me in my room, and she didn't know anyone with that description there, or even why they'd be wearing that color scrubs in that area of the hospital. Okay, fine. It's a big hospital. I don't know if everyone knows everyone, so that could explain it. I asked other nurses when they'd come in. I asked the doctor who would come by, and again, they've never seen a woman matching that description. When asked about the scrubs, apparently scrubs there are color coordinated to the area of the hospital people work in. Haiku was not lavender or light purple. There's a plethora of explanations on what could be the truth behind the nurse, but I will say none of them feel 100% concrete to me. I don't know if it was a coping mechanism my brain employed, and I will always be hesitant to say it was something more supernatural, but I cannot really explain it because no one else had any answers that could really get me past it. I never saw her again in person. because I was transferred to the PCCA, a juvenile behavioral psychiatric ward. I since have never even imagined or dreamed about her, and I've had brushes with death since then. Could be totally logical, but there's a part of me that will always wonder if it really was something that did defy logic. I dunno man. Death is just nothing, but I had a nurse with me when I died. No one but me seems to know it's true. Death is just like falling asleep without the dreaming. I will say, waking up is absolutely terrifying as you don't know where you are, why you're there or why you have a tube shoved down your throat. Seriously a nightmare in waking up. Calmness, then nothing. Even if you don't accept it, there's calm. Also, the pain goes away, and what feels like you dozing off mentally, you can kinda hear what's going on, but everything is muffled and distorted. Then calm nothingness. No pain, no color, not sound, no thoughts. Then blip, you're waking up with enough tubes sticking out of you that you feel like a puppet, and machines screaming in a room you don't recognize. I suffocated to death because of tonsillitis. They got removed in emergency surgery, and I remember the feeling of absolute nothing as my body started to shut down, and essentially a life flashing before my 6-year-old eyes moment. Before waking up a few hours later. It's the only thing I remember from before the age of 9. Not clinically dead but close to it. Once when I was younger I got a really bad infection and high temperature 41.2 degrees Celsius and I was losing my conscience, and I remember it being just like drifting into nothingness, like imagine floating adrift in the sea and just a black wave coming over you and that's it. The weirdest thing is that I wasn't afraid of it, there were no emotions, nothing, so I hope when I'll be on my deathbed it's gonna be like that. I was in a hospital 2 years ago and I slowly felt myself losing consciousness. It was messed up because you can't control it or do something. You just watch and let it happen. It was the course of 2 or 3 seconds. At first I remember feeling confused, then scared because I couldn't snap out of it, and then I just felt acceptance. If I was gonna die I couldn't do anything about it and I let it go. I felt a bit of peace too. I was woken up by doctors and it felt so strange. Like the picture I was seeing from my eyes was like watching some TV show. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.